The council chamber on Zenith Prime Station stretched 300 meters across, its curved walls showing the stars beyond. Sophie sat in the human delegation seat, her hands folded on the smooth metal desk before her. Around her, representatives from 40 different species filled their own sections, some breathing oxygen like her, others in specialized atmosphere bubbles. 3 months had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Council. 3 months of debates, treaties, and careful diplomacy. Sophie had hoped the transition would be smooth, but she knew better than to expect easy acceptance. High Commander rose from the section. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his gray skin marked with ritual scars that showed his rank. His 4 eyes focused on Sophie as he spoke, his voice amplified through the chamber's translation system. "I call into question the humans' presence on this council," announced. His tone carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "They have been in space for barely a century. They possess no great fleets. Their technology is primitive compared to the established powers. What right do they have to stand among us?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in agreement. Others watched with neutral expressions, waiting to see how the situation would develop. Sophie stood slowly. She had prepared for this moment, though she had hoped it would not come so soon. "Commander, Earth may be new to interstellar travel, but we have much to offer. Our scientific research, our cultural diversity, our perspective as newcomers can benefit this council." His mouth parts twisted into what his species considered a smile. Words, nothing but words. The council was founded on strength. Every species here proved their worth through action, not speeches. Counselor the Mediator raised one of her 6 arms. Her voice was calm, measured. "High Commander, what exactly are you proposing?" "A trial by combat," said. The chamber fell silent. "It is an ancient tradition, used when a species' worthiness is questioned. Let the humans send their strongest warrior to face our champion. If their warrior wins, we will accept their presence without further challenge. If they lose, they withdraw their application and return when they are truly ready." Sophie felt her heart rate increase, though she kept her face calm. Trial by combat was indeed an old tradition, one she had read about but never expected to face. It had not been invoked in over 2 centuries. "This is unnecessary," Sophie said. "Surely there are other ways to prove our value to the Council." "Are you refusing?" asked. "Does humanity lack even the courage to accept a fair challenge?" Before Sophie could respond, a voice came from behind her. "I'll do it." Sophie turned. Commander Victor Hayes stood at the back of the human delegation area. He wore his formal uniform, the blue fabric showing his rank and service medals. At 67 years old, Victor looked exactly what he was, a soldier long past his prime. His hair was completely gray, his face marked with lines that spoke of decades of hard decisions. He walked with a slight limp, an old injury that never fully healed. "Commander Hayes," Sophie said quietly, "we should discuss this privately." Victor walked forward, his steps steady despite the limp. "No discussion needed, Ambassador. I volunteer." The chamber erupted, not in shock or concern, but in laughter. The sound came from dozens of different species, creating a bizarre chorus of alien amusement. Even seemed surprised, though his expression quickly shifted to something like satisfaction. "This is your choice?" asked. "This old human, we expected you to send one of your enhanced soldiers or perhaps someone with your military augmentation technology. Instead, you offer us this." Victor stopped beside Sophie's desk. He looked up without any visible emotion. "I'm what you're getting, unless you want to withdraw your challenge." More laughter rolled through the chamber. Sophie grabbed Victor's arm, her voice low and urgent. "Victor, please, we can send someone else. Lieutenant is here on station, or we can call for reinforcements from Earth. You don't have to do this." Victor's weathered face showed the hint of a smile. "Trust me, Ambassador, I know exactly what I'm doing." Raised his arms, commanding silence. "Very well. The trial will take place in 3 days in the Grand Arena. Standard rules apply. No lethal weapons. Combat continues until one fighter surrenders or cannot continue. Is this acceptable to both parties?" "Acceptable," Victor said before Sophie could speak. Looked between them, her expression unreadable. "The Council recognizes this challenge. 3 days from now at mid-cycle, the trial will commence. This session is adjourned." The delegates began filing out, many still laughing or shaking their heads at the absurdity of an elderly human accepting such a challenge. Sophie waited until most had left before turning to Victor. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "Is their champion. He's 8 feet tall, enhanced with combat implants, trained since childhood. He's never lost a fight." Victor picked up his jacket from the back of his chair. "I know who he is. I've read his file. 47 victories in the arena, most of them lasting less than 5 minutes. Then why volunteer? This isn't about pride, Victor. If you lose, Earth loses its council seat. All our diplomatic work, all our efforts to establish ourselves out here, it all ends." Victor pulled on his jacket, adjusting the collar. "Sophie, I volunteered because I'm the right choice, not despite my age, because of it." "That doesn't make sense." "It will." Victor headed toward the exit, then paused and looked back. "Get some rest, Ambassador, and don't worry, I've been underestimated before." Sophie watched him leave, feeling a mix of frustration and concern. She pulled out her communication device and sent a message to Earth, explaining what had happened. The response would take time, given the distance, but she needed to inform someone of this development. As she walked to her quarters, Sophie passed a public display showing news feeds from across the galaxy. Already the story was spreading. "Elderly human accepts combat challenge," read one headline. "Trial by combat, comedy or tragedy?" asked another. Betting pools were forming, with odds heavily favoring. In his own quarters, Victor removed his uniform jacket and stood before the mirror. His reflection showed a man marked by time and conflict. Scars crossed his arms, remnants of battles fought decades ago. His right shoulder sat slightly lower than his left, an injury from the unification wars that never healed properly. He opened a drawer and pulled out a worn photograph. It showed a younger version of himself standing beside a man in his 20s, both in military uniform. His son Daniel, dead 15 years now in a conflict that should never have happened. Beside the photograph sat another image. His granddaughter, now 16, the reason he kept fighting for a better future. Victor set the photographs back carefully. He knew what others saw when they looked at him, an old man past his prime, making a foolish choice driven by pride or nostalgia. They saw weakness, age, and inevitable defeat. They were wrong, not about his age or his declining physical abilities. Those things were real, but they were wrong about what made a warrior dangerous. Strength faded, speed diminished, but some things only improved with time. He had 3 days to prepare. 3 days before he would stand in that arena and teach the galaxy a lesson they desperately needed to learn. The question was not whether he could win. The question was whether they would understand what his victory really meant. Victor began his evening stretches, moving through routines he had practiced for 40 years. His body protested, joints stiff and muscles tight. He ignored the discomfort, focusing on each movement, each breath. Pain was temporary. Legacy was forever. Outside his window, Zenith Prime Station orbited in the darkness between stars, and somewhere on that station, a champion prepared for what he believed would be an easy victory. News of the challenge spread across the galaxy within hours. Every major network picked up the story, and most treated it as entertainment rather than serious competition. On a dozen worlds, betting pools swelled with wagers heavily favoring the champion. The consensus was clear. This would be a short, one-sided demonstration of why humans did not belong on the Galactic Council. Sophie spent the first day after the challenge trying to change Victor's mind. She brought him tactical assessments, medical reports, and historical data on previous trials by combat. Victor read everything she gave him, nodded politely, and continued his preparations without changing his approach. On the second day, a transport shuttle arrived at Zenith Prime Station. Sophie met it at the docking bay, surprised to find 6 young humans emerging in military uniforms. She recognized the leader immediately. Lieutenant Jake stepped forward and saluted. At 29, he represented everything the galaxy expected from human warriors. Enhanced reflexes from genetic therapy, combat trained since 18, physically perfect. Behind him came 5 others, each impressive in their own right. "Lieutenant," Sophie said, returning the salute, "I didn't request backup from Earth Command." "We volunteered, Ambassador," Jake said. "When we heard Commander Hayes accepted the challenge, we caught the next transport. We're here to support him." Sophie felt a surge of hope. "If you're here to replace him in the arena, I'm certain he would understand. You're younger, faster, and your combat scores are exceptional." Jake shook his head. "We're not here to replace him, ma'am. We're here to watch." "Watch?" A woman stepped forward, her lab coat visible under her uniform jacket. "I'm Dr. Helen Carter," Ambassador. I designed most of Earth's current augmentation programs. I studied under Commander Hayes at the military academy 15 years ago. If he says he can win this fight, I believe him. Sophie looked at the others. Captain Foster, a pilot with cybernetic enhancements visible at his temples. Maya, an intelligence officer whose file showed tactical genius. Lieutenant Park, a demolitions expert. Corporal Lisa, a combat medic with cutting-edge training. Each one could probably defeat most aliens in single combat. I don't understand, Sophie admitted. Why come all this way just to watch? Maya spoke up, her voice calm and analytical. Because Commander Hayes taught most of Earth's current military doctrine, Ambassador. We want to see what he shows the galaxy. Sophie led them to the observation deck above the arena preparation areas. Through the transparent floor, they could see the massive combat space below. Workers were setting up obstacles, weapon racks, and safety barriers. In 3 sections around the arena, thousands of seats waited for spectators. On one side, prepared in his holding area, the champion stood 8 feet tall, his body a mass of muscle and bioengineered enhancements. Cameras captured him performing exercises that would break a normal being. He lifted weights that would crush a human, moved with speed that seemed impossible for his size. Combat implants gleamed at his joints, providing additional strength and protection. On the opposite side, Victor sat on a simple bench in his own holding area. He performed basic stretches, moving slowly and carefully. His preparation looked almost boring compared to his display of power. He looked so calm, Sophie said, watching Victor through the observation window. Helen smiled. That's because he is calm. Commander Hayes doesn't waste energy on displays. Every movement has purpose. Jake checked his communication device, reading something that made him grin. The betting odds are crazy. 10,000 to 1 against the commander. Some pools are even offering 50,000 to 1. Did you bet on him? Sophie asked. Every credit I have, Jake said without hesitation. The others nodded in agreement. Below in his preparation chamber, Victor stood and walked to a locker on the wall. He opened it and removed a small case. Inside were items that looked almost comically simple: worn leather gloves, knee braces, and a support wrap for his shoulder. Maya watched him carefully. He's not even using standard combat gear. He doesn't need it, Helen said. Watch his movements. See how he's testing each joint, measuring his current range of motion. He's cataloging every limitation his body has right now, adapting his strategy accordingly. Sophie pulled up his combat record on her device. 47 victories. Average fight duration, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Longest fight, 12 minutes. He's never been defeated, never even been seriously injured. Numbers don't tell the whole story, said. The pilot leaned against the railing, his cybernetic eyes focused on Victor. I was in a training simulation with Commander Hayes once back when I was cocky and 22. I had better reflexes, better gear, youth on my side. He put me down in 90 seconds. How? Sophie asked. He made me beat myself, said. Every move I made, he turned against me. Every advantage I thought I had became a weakness. By the time I realized what was happening, I was on the ground wondering what hit me. Laughed at the memory. I saw that match. You were so mad afterward. I was young and stupid, admitted. The commander taught me an important lesson that day. Combat isn't about who's stronger or faster. It's about who understands the fight better. A tone sounded through the observation deck, announcing that media crews were arriving for pre-fight coverage. Through the main windows, Sophie could see dozens of ships docking at the station. Representatives from news organizations across the galaxy had come to witness what they expected to be a humiliating defeat for humanity. Lisa, the combat medic, reviewed medical data on her tablet. I've been studying biology. Species has redundant organs, enhanced bone density, and muscle fibers that are 3 times more efficient than human tissue. In a direct strength competition, the commander has no chance. Then how does he win? Sophie asked, feeling her frustration grow. He doesn't fight their fight, Lisa said simply. He fights his own. On the main display screens, coverage had already begun. Alien commentators discussed the upcoming trial, most of them treating it as a joke. One host, a floating jellyfish-like creature, actually laughed while reviewing Victor's basic military record. 67 years old, the host said, its translation coming through clearly. No genetic enhancements, no combat implants, limited cybernetics for medical purposes only. Viewers, this is either the bravest or most foolish decision in recent galactic history. Another commentator, a reptilian being with scales that shifted colors, added his opinion. I've reviewed human combat doctrine. They're competent soldiers, certainly, but they lack the physical advantages of established warrior races. This will end the fight in seconds. Jake muted the sound, annoyed by their dismissive tone. They have no idea what they're about to see. Sophie wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that Victor knew what he was doing. But watching the careful, slow movements of an elderly man preparing to face a champion in his prime made doubt eat at her confidence. A door opened behind them. Victor entered the observation deck, now wearing simple combat clothing, loose pants, a fitted shirt, his worn gloves and supports. He looked like someone heading to a casual training session, not a fight that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. Commander, Sophie said, standing quickly. Are you sure about this? It's not too late to choose someone else. Victor looked at the 6 young soldiers, then at Sophie. His weathered face showed no fear, no doubt. How many wars have you kids seen? Jake answered immediately. 2 major conflicts, sir, and multiple smaller operations. Maya. 3 conflicts, extensive covert operations, Maya reported. Victor nodded, looking at each of them in turn. They all gave similar answers, impressive records for their ages. Then he turned back to Sophie. I've been in 7 wars, Ambassador. Not conflicts, not operations. Wars. The kind where entire cities burn and you watch good people die for inches of ground. The kind where you learn that survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being the one who refuses to quit when everything says you should. He walked to the window, looking down at the arena below. Workers were finishing their preparations, testing the safety systems and energy shields. Down there is a champion, Victor continued. He's won every fight he's been in, and I'm sure he's very good at what he does. But he's fought in controlled environments, in trials with rules and safety measures. He's never fought someone who had to win or die. He's never faced an enemy who had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. Victor turned back to face them. That's the difference. Not strength, not speed, not technology. The difference is understanding what you're willing to endure to achieve victory. Helen smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. How long until you think he realizes he's in trouble? About 30 seconds after the fight starts, Victor said. Maybe less if he's smarter than I think. A final announcement echoed through the station. 1 hour until the trial by combat would begin. Spectators were starting to fill the arena seats, thousands of aliens eager to witness what they believed would be humanity's humiliation. Victor headed toward the door, then paused. Sophie, whatever happens down there, remember something. Earth doesn't need me to prove we belong on that council. We already belong. This trial is just teaching them to see what's already true. He left the observation deck, his footsteps steady despite his limp. Sophie watched him go, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. Around her, the 6 young soldiers prepared to witness their teacher in action. Below in the arena, performed one final exercise routine, his movements a display of raw power and perfect technique. Cameras captured every moment, broadcasting to billions across the galaxy. In the opposite holding area, Victor sat quietly, his eyes closed, breathing slowly. He looked like someone at peace, not facing the most important fight of his life. And perhaps that was exactly the point. The arena gates opened with a deep metallic sound that echoed through the massive chamber. Victor stepped onto the combat floor, his boots making soft sounds against the smooth surface. Above him, 20,000 spectators from dozens of species filled the seats, their voices creating a noise like distant thunder. Cameras hovered at various heights, capturing every angle for broadcast across the galaxy. The arena itself was enormous, easily 200 meters across. Metal pillars rose at intervals, providing cover and tactical options. Weapon racks lined the walls, each holding non-lethal training weapons approved for trial combat. The floor had varying levels, creating terrain that could advantage or disadvantage depending on how fighters used it. Energy shields shimmered at the edges, protecting the crowd from any stray attacks. Medical teams waited in designated areas, ready to respond if needed. Everything about the arena spoke of tradition and careful preparation. Victor walked to the center, his pace unhurried. His gray hair caught the bright lights overhead. The crowd's noise shifted, becoming laughter mixed with curious murmurs. To them, he looked exactly like what he was, an old man in simple clothing, carrying no weapons, showing no obvious advantage. The opposite gate opened, emerged, and the crowd roared its approval. The champion stood 8 feet tall, his gray skin marked with honor scars. His muscles moved under his skin like coiled cables, each movement precise and controlled. Combat implants gleamed at his major joints, providing enhanced strength and protection. His 4 eyes focused on Victor with what might have been curiosity or contempt. Counselor's voice came through the arena speakers, amplified and translated for all present. This is a trial by combat, witnessed by the Galactic Council and broadcast throughout known space. The rules are established. No lethal weapons. Combat continues until one fighter surrenders or can no longer continue. Medical teams stand ready. Both fighters have accepted these terms. She paused, letting the crowd settle. Champion of the Empire faces Victor Hayes, commander of Earth's military forces. Let the trial begin. A tone sounded. The fight was official. Moved first, closing the distance between them with impressive speed. For someone his size, he moved like a predator, each step purposeful and controlled. Victor turned slightly, adjusting his stance, but made no move to attack or retreat. The champion's first strike came fast, a straight punch aimed at Victor's chest. It would have ended most fights immediately. Victor, the movement looking almost clumsy. His fist passed through empty air where Victor had stood a moment before. The crowd laughed. It looked like luck, like an old man stumbling out of the way by accident. Struck again, a combination of punches that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Victor moved between them, his footwork simple but effective. He wasn't fast, but he was exactly where he needed to be. Each strike missed by inches. In the observation deck, Sophie gripped the railing, her knuckles white. He's barely dodging. One hit and this is over. Jake shook his head, his enhanced eyes tracking the fight carefully. Watch closer, Ambassador. He's not barely dodging. He's making it look that way. Below's frustration was starting to show. He had expected this fight to end in seconds. Instead, this elderly human kept slipping away, moving just enough to avoid each strike. The champion changed tactics, using his reach advantage to force Victor back toward the arena wall. Victor let himself be pushed back, his movements defensive and seemingly uncertain. The crowd's laughter grew louder. Even watching from the council observation platform looked satisfied. This was going exactly as expected. Then something shifted, lunged forward, committing to a grapple. His massive arms reached out to grab Victor, to use his superior strength to end this embarrassing display. His hands were about to close around the old man's shoulders when Victor spoke. "You've never actually killed anyone, have you?" The words were quiet, meant only for, but they carried weight, a simple observation that hit like a physical blow. Scrip hesitated just for a fraction of a second. His 4 eyes widened slightly. In that moment of hesitation, Victor moved. His hands struck with precision, not power. He hit nerve clusters at elbows, pressure points that even anatomy couldn't protect. The champion's arms went numb, his grip failing before it could form. Victor followed through with strikes to knees, targeting the joints where the combat implants connected to natural tissue. Not trying to overpower the implants, just exploiting the weak points where technology met biology. Stumbled, his balance compromised. The laughter in the crowd died. This was not what they expected to see. Recovered quickly, backing away to reassess. His arms regained feeling after a few seconds, the temporary paralysis fading, but his expression had changed. For the first time in his 47 arena victories, uncertainty showed in his eyes. "You're very skilled," Victor said, his voice calm and conversational. "Good technique, excellent physical conditioning. Your training is obvious." He moved forward, not attacking but closing distance. Struck again, his punches faster now, more desperate. Victor weaved through them, his movements economical and precise. "But skill and training aren't the same as experience," Victor continued. "You fought trials, controlled environments with rules and medical teams standing by. You've never fought someone who was actually trying to kill you." Another strike, another miss. Victor was inside guard now, too close for the champion's reach advantage to matter. He struck again at nerve clusters, at weak points in anatomy that he had studied carefully. Each hit was measured, precise, doing exactly as much damage as intended and no more. "The problem with controlled combat," Victor said, ducking under a wild swing, "is that it teaches you to fight by rules. Real combat has only one rule: survive. Tried to use his size advantage to simply overpower this irritating opponent. He grabbed for Victor again, and this time his hands found purchase. He lifted Victor off the ground, his superior strength finally asserting dominance. The crowd leaned forward. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. Victor didn't struggle against the grip. Instead, he relaxed, letting his full weight hang from his hands. Then he struck upward with both fists, hitting precisely at the champion's throat where a nerve cluster connected to respiratory function. His grip loosened involuntarily, a biological response he couldn't control. Victor dropped free, landing in a crouch. Before could recover, Victor swept his legs, using the champion's own momentum against him. For the first time in the fight, hit the ground. The impact wasn't hard, but the psychological effect was enormous. Champions don't fall, winners don't get knocked down. In the observation deck, Helen nodded with satisfaction. There it is, now the real lesson begins. Rose quickly, his pride stung more than his body. He charged again, but now his movements were different. Less controlled, more emotional. Victor had gotten inside his head, and it showed. The fight continued, but the dynamic had completely changed. Victor wasn't just avoiding attacks anymore. He was controlling the pace, choosing when to engage and when to retreat. Every exchange left more frustrated, more off balance. Maya watched with analytical interest. He's not trying to win quickly, he's dismantling him piece by piece. Teaching him, corrected. The commander's showing him how many mistakes he's making. Victor struck at joints, his mobility. He targeted the champion's confidence, his certainty. Each calculated hit removed another advantage. Was still stronger, still faster in many ways, but those advantages meant less and less as the fight progressed. Minutes passed. The crowd had gone silent, watching something they didn't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen. Champions didn't get outfought by elderly opponents. Physical superiority was supposed to guarantee victory. His breathing was labored now, his movements less precise. Frustration and confusion warred in his expression. He had trained his entire life for combat, had won every trial he entered, and now this old human was making him look like an amateur. Victor showed no such fatigue. His breathing remained steady, his movements consistent. He wasn't expending energy on displays or unnecessary actions. Every move had purpose, every strike accomplished something specific. "You're confused," Victor said, dodging another attack. "You're wondering how this is possible, how someone weaker and slower is winning." He struck again, a precise hit to solar plexus that left the champion gasping. "It's because you're fighting the wrong battle. You're trying to use your strength against me. I'm using your strength against you." Roared, a sound of pure frustration. He grabbed one of the training weapons from a nearby rack, a staff meant to give reach advantage. The crowd murmured at this development. Victor waited, watching, swung the staff with impressive skill, forcing Victor to give ground. For a moment, it seemed the weapon might change the fight's outcome. Then Victor caught the staff mid-swing, his timing perfect. He used his own force to pull the champion forward off balance. A strike to the wrist made release the weapon. Victor tossed it aside, back to being unarmed. "Weapons don't change the fundamental problem," Victor said. "You're still fighting angry. Angry fighters make mistakes." He proved his point by exploiting one of those mistakes, a momentary overextension that left side exposed. Victor's strike hit precise pressure points along the ribs, causing temporary paralysis in the champion's left side. Dropped to one knee, his body betraying him. He tried to rise, but his left leg wouldn't fully support his weight. He looked up at Victor, and for the first time, fear showed clearly in his eyes. Victor stood over him, not even breathing hard. The arena was completely silent. 20,000 spectators watched, unable to believe what they were witnessing. "You can yield," Victor said quietly. "There's no shame in it, you fought well." Tried to rise again, his pride refusing to accept defeat. His leg gave out, sending him back to his knees. He looked at the old human standing calmly before him, understanding finally dawning in his eyes. This wasn't about strength or speed. It never had been. This was about something else entirely, something he had never learned in all his controlled trials and arena victories. "I yield," said, his voice barely audible. The silence in the arena lasted perhaps 5 seconds, though it felt like much longer. 20,000 spectators sat frozen, their minds trying to process what they had just witnessed. Then slowly sound returned. Not cheers or celebration, but confused murmurs that rippled through the crowd like waves. Victor extended his hand too. The champion looked at the offered help, then accepted it. Victor pulled him up, supporting the larger being until his legs fully recovered function. They stood face to face for a moment, and some understanding passed between them. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor, scanning with their equipment. The champion waved them off, his pride damaged more than his body. He walked toward the exit under his own power, though his movements showed the effects of Victor's precise strikes. Victor turned to face the council observation platform. High Commander stood at the railing, his expression unreadable. Counselor rose from her seat, preparing to make the formal announcement of the trial's outcome. Before she could speak, Victor's voice carried through the arena, amplified by the same system that had announced the fight's beginning. "You asked if I'm humanity's strongest warrior," Victor said. He wasn't shouting, but his words reached every corner of the massive chamber. "The answer is no." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Sophie, watching from the observation deck with the others, felt her heart rate spike. What was he doing? "I'm 67 years old," Victor continued. "My reflexes are half what they were 30 years ago. I have arthritis in both knees and my right shoulder. On a good day, I can run maybe 2 miles before my body reminds me that I'm old." He gestured toward the observation deck where the 6 young soldiers stood. "Those 6 up there could each defeat me on their best day. Lieutenant has reaction speeds that make mine look glacial. Dr. Carter designed biological enhancements I'll never have. Captain Foster's cybernetic systems give him advantages I can only dream of." Victor paused, letting his words sink in. "But I'm still standing here and your champion yielded to me. You want to know why?" High Commander's voice boomed across the arena. "Explain yourself, human. What trick did you use?" "No trick," Victor said. "Just experience. See, I grew up on a planet you call a death world. Earth tried to kill humans for 300,000 years before we figured out how to survive it. Hurricanes that level cities, earthquakes that swallow buildings, diseases that spread faster than we could cure them, predators that saw us as food." He started walking slowly around the arena floor, his limp more pronounced now that the fight's adrenaline was fatting. "We adapted. We learned. We survived by being smarter than the threats we faced, not stronger. That's what you don't understand about humanity. Our greatest weapon isn't our bodies or our technology. It's our refusal to give up when everything says we should." Cameras tracked his movement, broadcasting his words to billions across the galaxy. Sophie realized he wasn't just talking to the arena. He was addressing every being watching this transmission. "I've been in 7 wars," Victor said. "Real wars, not arena trials. The kind where you watch cities burn, where you hold your best friend while he bleeds out, knowing there's nothing you can do to save him, where you make decisions that haunt your dreams for decades afterward." His voice remained steady, factual, carrying no plea for sympathy. "Those experiences taught me something your champion never learned. Combat isn't about strength or speed. It's about will. It's about being willing to do what must be done when every instinct screams at you to stop." Leaned forward, his 4 eyes fixed on Victor. "You speak of survival, yet you volunteer for a trial that could have killed you. You risk your life for pride." "Not pride," Victor corrected. "Understanding. You needed to see what humanity is capable of. Not our best warriors with their enhancements and training, just an old soldier who refused to quit, because that's what we are, all of us. Every human you'll ever meet learned this from birth: adapt or die." He stopped in the center of the arena, facing the council platform directly. "You wanted proof that we belong on your council? I just gave it to you. But here's something else you need to understand." Victor's expression shifted, becoming harder. "Those 6 soldiers watching from above, I trained hundreds like them, and they're training thousands more. Each generation of human warriors learns from the one before, improves on what we knew, adapts to new challenges." He let that sink in for a moment. "I'm old and slow, and I still defeated your champion. Imagine what our young soldiers can do. Imagine what the generation after them will accomplish. We don't have your biological advantages or your centuries of spacefaring tradition. But we have something you lack. We learned to survive on a world that didn't want us alive." Counselor spoke, her 6 arms gesturing for calm as the crowd's noise increased. "Commander Hayes, are you threatening this council?" "No," Victor said immediately. "I'm offering context. Humanity doesn't want war. We've had enough war to last us. We want to build, to explore, to learn from you and share what we know. That's why we applied for council membership. That's why Ambassador works so hard at diplomacy." He gestured to where Sophie stood in the observation deck. "But if you force our hand, if you make us fight to prove our worth again and again, eventually you'll see what happens when humans stop holding back. And I promise you, Counselor, you don't want that." The arena fell silent again. The threat was clear, though Victor's tone remained conversational. This wasn't a challenge driven by aggression, but a warning given in good faith. His posture had changed. The arrogance that marked his earlier demands was gone, replaced by something like calculation. "You speak as if humanity hides its true capabilities." "Every species hides something," Victor replied. "You hide your uncertainties behind displays of strength. Others hide their fears behind technology. Humanity hides the full depth of what survival cost us. We smile and negotiate and build diplomatic relationships because we prefer peace. Don't mistake that preference for inability." He started walking toward the exit, then stopped and looked back at. "You want a real demonstration, not of one old soldier, but of what humanity can do when we actually try. I'll make you an offer." The crowd leaned forward, eager to hear what came next. "Those 6 soldiers watching from above against 50 of your finest warriors. Training weapons, non-lethal combat, standard arena rules. If your 50 win, humanity withdraws our council application and returns when you deem us worthy. If our 6 win, all questions about our capabilities end permanently." Sophie's mind raced. 6 against 50 was suicide, no matter how skilled the soldiers were. She started to protest, but Jake put a hand on her arm, shaking his head slightly. His expression showed interest mixed with suspicion. 6 humans against 50 warriors? This seems foolish even by your standards, Commander." "It's a fair offer," Victor said. "We're the newcomers. We should prove ourselves by your standards, not ours. Choose your 50 best. We'll bring our 6, 3 days from now, same arena, unless you're concerned about the outcome." The challenge hit its mark. Couldn't refuse without looking weak, not after his champion had just been defeated. He looked to Counselor, who appeared troubled but intrigued. "The Council will consider this proposal," said. "This session is adjourned while we deliberate." Victor nodded and walked toward the exit. Medical personnel tried to scan him, but he waved them off. "I'm fine, just old. That's not a medical condition you can fix." The crowd dispersed slowly, their conversations animated. This trial had not gone as expected, and now an even more ambitious demonstration was proposed. Media crews scattered to analyze and speculate, their earlier mockery replaced by serious discussion. Sophie and the others met Victor outside the arena. She wanted to be angry at him for making such an offer without consulting her, but his calm expression stopped her. 6 against 50, Commander," Sophie said instead. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Victor looked at Jake and the others. "How do you kids feel about teaching the galaxy what you can really do?" Jake grinned. "We trained for this our whole lives, sir, literally." Helen pulled out a data pad, already running calculations. "Combat doctrine emphasizes direct confrontation and overwhelming force. Standard unit tactics, heavy on hierarchy. We can work with that." Maya nodded. "Give me 12 hours to analyze their training methods. I'll find the patterns." "This is crazy," Sophie said, though she could see the confidence in their eyes. "What if you lose?" Victor put a hand on her shoulder. "Ambassador, I didn't volunteer for the trial to show Earth's strongest warrior. I volunteered to teach the galaxy that they don't understand what humanity really is. This next demonstration will finish that lesson." "And if the Council refuses the challenge?" "They won't," Victor said with certainty. "His pride won't let him. He just watched an old man defeat his champion. He needs to restore honor, and crushing 6 humans with 50 warriors is too tempting to resist." Checked his communication device. "News feeds are going crazy. The betting pools are even more lopsided now. 100,000 to 1 against us." "Then we should all bet everything we have," said cheerfully. "I could use a new ship." They walked together toward the human quarters, their confidence unwavering despite the impossible odds they had just accepted. Behind them, the Council began their deliberations, and across the galaxy, billions watched the recordings, trying to understand what they had witnessed. In a private chamber, sat alone, reviewing footage of his fight. He watched Victor's movements, analyzed each strike, studied the way the old human had controlled every aspect of their combat. For the first time in his life, the champion understood that winning trials was not the same as being a warrior. On the High Commander's military advisors assembled. 50 warriors would be chosen, the best their empire could field. They would face 6 humans in 3 days, and this time there would be no mercy, no holding back. What they didn't realize was that Victor Hayes had counted on exactly that response. The council voted to approve Victor's challenge within 6 hours. Personally selected 50 warriors, each one a veteran of their military forces. The odds makers across the galaxy adjusted their numbers, 200,000 to 1 against the humans. Some pools went even higher. The consensus was clear. This would be a massacre, a demonstration of why upstart species should know their place. The venue changed for this demonstration. Instead of the traditional arena, the council chose a massive training facility on territory, a complex designed for battalion-level combat exercises. The environment included buildings, obstacles, varied terrain, and multiple levels. It was meant to test unit tactics, not individual combat. Sophie spent the 3 days trying to prepare for diplomatic fallout. If humanity lost this challenge, Earth would be diplomatically isolated for decades. Every message she sent back to Earth Command received the same response. Trust Victor Hayes, trust the soldiers he trained. The 6 humans prepared in a way that confused most observers. They didn't spend hours in physical training or weapons practice. Instead, they gathered in a conference room with maps, data displays, and endless cups of coffee. Maya led tactical discussions. Helen provided biological data on physiology, mapped the facility's layout, identified key structural points. Lisa reviewed medical protocols, and Jake coordinated their roles. Victor watched from a chair in the corner, occasionally offering suggestions but mostly letting them work. This was their fight now. His part was done. On the morning of the demonstration, the facility filled with spectators. The council members attended in person, along with military observers from dozens of species. Camera drones positioned themselves throughout the complex. Security was heavy, though the weapons were all non-lethal training gear. The 50 warriors entered first, their formation precise and professional. They wore standard combat armor, carried training rifles and melee weapons, and moved with the confidence of experienced soldiers. Their commander, Captain, was a veteran of actual combat, unlike most trial champions. His service record showed 3 wars, multiple commendations, and a reputation for tactical excellence. Studied the facility layout, assigning his soldiers to squads and giving each a sector to control. He established a command post in the central building, set up communication relays, and deployed scouts. Within 20 minutes, his 50 warriors had effective control of the entire complex. The 6 humans entered from the opposite side. They wore simple combat clothing with minimal armor, carried basic training weapons, and looked impossibly outnumbered. The watching crowd murmured, many expressing pity for the young soldiers about to face overwhelming odds. The demonstration rules were simple: capture or incapacitate the opposing force. The exercise would end when one side achieved victory or after 2 hours, whichever came first. Medical teams stood ready, and safety protocols ensured no one would suffer permanent injury. Counselor's voice announced the start. A tone sounded through the facility. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. The forces moved in coordinated sweeps, searching for their opponents. Their formation was textbook perfect, each squad covering others, communication constant and clear. Captain directed them from his command post, watching multiple displays showing his soldiers' positions. Then's first trap activated. 3 soldiers stepped on pressure plates disguised in the terrain. Non-lethal shock charges stunned them instantly. Before their squad could respond, Jake appeared from cover, moving with enhanced speed to tag 2 more with training rounds. He vanished again before they could return fire. Adjusted, pulling his forces back to more defensive positions. He sent scouts ahead to check for more traps. They found 2, disabled them, and reported success. They didn't find the other 15. Maya's intelligence work proved devastating. She had studied military doctrine for 3 days straight, identifying patterns in their communication and tactical responses. Every time issued an order, Maya predicted it and positioned the humans to exploit it. Lisa used her medical knowledge to identify physiological weaknesses. Soldiers wore armor that protected vital areas, but joints and nerve clusters remained vulnerable. Her precise strikes with training weapons dropped enemies without requiring overwhelming force. had memorized the facility's layout perfectly. He moved through ventilation systems and maintenance corridors that the had overlooked. He appeared behind their lines, creating chaos and confusion before disappearing again. Helen's biological expertise meant she knew exactly how much force each training weapon needed for maximum effect. She adjusted everyone's tactics, turning their limited firepower into precision instruments. 20 minutes into the exercise, 15 soldiers were incapacitated, pulled his remaining forces into a defensive perimeter around his command post. The humans hadn't confronted them directly, hadn't engaged in the kind of straightforward battle they trained for. In the observation area, watched with growing concern. This wasn't how the demonstration was supposed to proceed. His warriors were being picked apart by guerrilla tactics, trap systems, and precision strikes. The humans fought like ghosts, appearing and vanishing without pattern. "They're not fighting fair," said the counselor. "There are no rules against tactics," she replied. "Your soldiers simply assumed a direct confrontation." Another trap activated. 5 more warriors went down to a combination of engineering and Jake's speed. The perimeter shrank further. Captain made a decision. He couldn't defend passively against an enemy that refused direct engagement. He split his remaining 30 soldiers into 6 squads of 5, each tasked with hunting down one human. If they couldn't defend the complex, they would become hunters themselves. Maya watched this development on her tactical display and smiled. "They just did exactly what I predicted. Positions everyone." The 6 squads spread out, each confident that 5 warriors could easily handle one human. They were about to learn a painful lesson. Squad 1 encountered Jake in a narrow corridor. They tried to surround him using standard tactics. Jake's enhanced reflexes made their coordination look slow. He moved through their formation like water, striking precisely at weak points Lisa had identified. All 5 were down in under a minute. Squad 2 found Helen in what appeared to be a dead end. They advanced confidently, weapons ready. Helen had spent the preparation time studying the facility's environmental systems. She activated ventilation controls, flooding the area with non-toxic gas that disrupted respiratory function. They collapsed without her firing a shot. Squad 3 cornered on an upper level. They thought they had him trapped, used his cybernetic enhancements to calculate trajectories and angles, then jumped through a window, caught a maintenance cable, and swung to a lower platform. By the time the squad repositioned, he had circled behind them. They never saw him coming. Squad 4 and 5 encountered, and Lisa working together. The demolition expert had prepared the entire sector, turning it into a maze of traps and hazards. Lisa provided covering fire while triggered each trap at precisely the right moment. The 2 squads tried to coordinate, but every move they made triggered another surprise. Squad 6 faced Maya in what should have been a straightforward engagement. But Maya had spent 3 days inside their tactical doctrine, understanding how they thought and reacted. She manipulated their movements like chess pieces, forcing them into positions where they blocked each other's fields of fire. When they realized what was happening, it was too late. 45 minutes into the demonstration, only Captain and 5 soldiers remained active. They had retreated to the command post, their confidence shattered. The 6 humans regrouped outside, coordinating their final approach. Watch them on his displays. These weren't ordinary soldiers. Their tactics were unconventional, unpredictable, and devastatingly effective. He had trained for 20 years, fought in 3 wars, and commanded hundreds of soldiers. None of that prepared him for this. His communication system activated. Maya's voice came through. "Captain, we could end this now. Your remaining soldiers are positioned at these coordinates. We have overlapping fields of fire on all of them, but we're offering you a choice. Surrender with honor or we continue." Looked at his 5 remaining soldiers. They were tired, confused, and facing an enemy they couldn't predict or counter. He had learned something important in these 45 minutes. Humans didn't fight like other species. They fought to win, using every advantage, exploiting every weakness, adapting to every situation. "How?" he asked simply. "How did 6 of you defeat 50 of us?" "Because we had to learn," Jake's voice joined the channel. "Commander Hayes explained it. We come from a world that tried to kill us. We learned to survive by being smarter than the threats we faced." "You could have killed us," said. "Multiple times. I see it now, reviewing the recordings. You chose non-lethal approaches when lethal options existed." "We're not here to kill anyone," Helen said. We're here to teach a lesson. Humanity wants peace, but we need the galaxy to understand that choosing peace doesn't mean we're weak. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, set down his weapon, and walked out of the command post with his hands visible. His 5 soldiers followed his example. The demonstration was over. The facility fell silent. 50 warriors, some of their empire's finest, had been systematically defeated by 6 humans, not through superior strength or technology, but through tactics, adaptation, and unconventional thinking. In the observation area, the council members sat in stunned silence. Looked like someone had struck him physically. Other delegates whispered among themselves, reassessing their understanding of humanity. Victor stood from his seat and walked to the railing. He watched the 6 soldiers gathering in the facility below, victorious but not celebrating. They treated their victory like a job completed, professional, and dignified. Sophie joined him at the railing. "I should be angry at you for arranging this without consulting me," she said quietly, "but I'm too impressed to be mad." "They didn't need me," Victor said. "I just gave them the opportunity to show what they learned. Everything they did down there came from their own training, their own intelligence. I just taught them the basic principle: survive by being smarter than your enemy." Counselor approached them. "Commander Hayes, that was a remarkable demonstration. Your soldiers showed abilities that even our most optimistic assessments didn't anticipate." "They're not special," Victor said. "Well, they are, but not the way you think. They're just examples of what humanity can produce when we try. Every human child learns basic survival skills. Every human soldier learns these tactics. These 6 are excellent, but they're not unique." Was quiet for a moment. "That's what troubles the council. If 6 can do this, what could 6,000 do? 6 million. "Hopefully you'll never need to find out," Victor said. "Because humanity didn't come to your council looking for enemies. We came looking for friends, for trade partners, for teachers who can show us what we don't know. That's still what we want." Sophie stepped forward. "The council needs to understand something. We could have kept these capabilities hidden. We could have continued letting you underestimate us. Commander Hayes chose to demonstrate our strength specifically so we wouldn't have to use it. This is humanity offering honesty instead of deception." Approached, his posture showing defeat but also grudging respect. "You've made your point, Commander. Humanity has proven its worth by our standards. I withdraw all challenges to your council membership." "Thank you," Victor said simply. "But remember something, High Commander. What you saw today wasn't humanity's full military capability. It was 6 soldiers who spent 3 days preparing for one specific scenario. They won because they're smart and well-trained, not because they're superhuman." He let that sink in, then continued. "Every species here has strengths we don't possess. You have advantages we'll never match. But we have something that only comes from surviving on a death world. We learned that giving up isn't an option. Adapt, improvise, overcome. That's what Earth taught us, and that's what we'll bring to this council." The council formally voted that evening. Earth's membership was confirmed unanimously, with himself casting one of the supporting votes. The challenge was ended, the demonstration complete. That night, Victor sat in his quarters writing a message to his granddaughter. He told her about the fights, about the lessons taught, about the galaxy slowly beginning to understand what humanity represented. He told her that her future would be safer because today's demonstrations showed strength paired with restraint. The 6 soldiers gathered in their own quarters, exhausted but satisfied. They had proven themselves not just as individuals, but as representatives of everything humanity could accomplish. They had won without arrogance, demonstrated capability without threat, and taught the galaxy to respect rather than fear them. 3 days later, Victor returned to Earth. He walked through the spaceport in civilian clothes, no medals or uniforms to mark him as the soldier who had changed galactic politics. His granddaughter met him at arrivals, running to hug him despite being 16 and theoretically too old for such displays. "Grandpa," she said, "I watched everything. You were amazing." Victor smiled, holding her close. "I was just an old man who refused to quit, sweetheart. The real heroes are the young people who will build the future. I just made sure they'd have the chance." They walked together toward the exit, toward home, toward a future where humanity had earned its place among the stars not through conquest, but through demonstrating that strength without wisdom was meaningless, and that the survivors of Earth understood both. Behind them, the galaxy adjusted to new realities. and in council chambers across known space, delegates reconsidered what it meant when humans smiled and chose peace. Because now they understood, humanity wasn't choosing peace from weakness, but from strength tempered by experience. The old soldier had taught his final lesson, and the galaxy would remember it for generations to come.